Hello and welcome to another episode of 5 at 5 on a Friday. I'm Monita Noli and today we are going to talk all about biodiversity in the garden. We're going to look at composting, planting for pollinators and keeping pests at bay, and also one plant this week, and that will be my fantastic zucchini. So let's start off with composting. Composting is one of those quintessential things when you have an urban backyard garden and you're into natural growing and you have a lot of your own food scraps left. And I think it's indispensable in my garden. Although it takes up to 6 months to make a good heap of compost, I think it's well worth it because what you get at the end of the day is just sublime. So composting is an aerobic process, meaning that it needs microorganisms that live or use oxygen and work through the scraps to create beautiful earth at the end of the day. I also have bokashi, which is an anaerobic system, basically fermenting the food scraps, and it has a different set of beneficial bacteria that works into the soil once you've done your bokashi scraps. I'm not going to open these today because they're sitting and fermenting for the last 10 days. They're both full, and what I normally do with my bokashi is I add it as a layer into my compost bin. Now, a lot of people have problems with composting because I believe they don't have the correct ratio of layers. It's very important to balance your carbon input, so things like cardboard and newspaper, with your green stuff, which is grass clippings and food scraps, so nitrogen and carbon mixture. When you layer it properly, and a lot more carbon than you think you need, so keep those packaging boxes, keep the weekly news, junk mail, anything that can be broken down is good as a source for composting. You can even use the lint from your vacuum cleaner in your compost bin. Pet hair, if you've got pets that need brushing quite regularly, that can all go into your compost bin, and just layer it properly. For more information on composting, go check out the Compost Collective. They work with Auckland Council, and they do lovely workshops on composting, worm farming, bokashi systems, and they can give you a lot more information on that. So I opened this guy up earlier a little bit at the bottom to see if we can find some beautiful worms. I don't have a worm farm as such, but my compost bin is open at the bottom, and there's normally a lot of worms that work their way through the compost system and breaks down the food scraps. Let's see if I dig in here. There's a buddy. And you see I've got a bit of animal pellets in here as well. It's because I keep bunnies and I keep quail, and I just open their bedding and the soiled stuff into the compost bin as well. But this is really good and friable, delicious stuff. And there's all sorts of other critters. There's ants, there's earwigs, there's centipedes, all kinds of interesting things in a compost bin when it works the way it should work. So another thing that's important for me to increase the biodiversity in my garden is to plant a lot of flowers, specifically to attract pollinators like bees and bumblebees, and also to attract hoverflies and other predatory insects that will deal to things like aphids and other pests in the garden. So I always interplant with flowers in my vegetable boxes themselves, but this year I've decided to create a barrier, or maybe an entranceway, of just flowering plants specifically planted as companions to the garden to bring in pollinators and predatory insects. So I've got things like borage, chamomile, phacelia, alyssum, poppies, foxglove, this is a shiso, lavender, violas, cornflower, thyme, more poppies, scabiosa, which is fantastic to bring in butterflies. They absolutely love scabiosa. More phacelia, some viscaria, which I think just came up from the compost that I used, a dahlia or two, marjoram, more lavender. There's cat mint and more thyme, poppies. This is calamint, lesser calamint, so it's a mixture between what looks like an oregano, but it smells like a mint. So it's a minty oregano, lesser calamint. Also makes beautiful catmint, catnip type of flowers. And this is basically here to invite the insects to come and play and stay in the garden. Even though tomatoes are self-pollinating, a lot of the other vegetables that I have all require a helping hand. And it really is lovely coming into the garden and kind of dodging the bees to get to your produce. If you don't already know about the importance of bees for our livelihoods as a species in terms of the food that we eat, it's a topic that you can easily go look up on the internet. There's a lot written about it. Suffice to say here that bees are incredibly important as pollinators for most of our food crops. Even things like our meat and milk produce essentially depend on bees because they pollinate the clovers which form the food for the cows and the sheep and all the other animals that we keep as livestock. So bees are really, really important, and they help us to create the fruit and the vegetables that we want in our home gardens too, with their pollinating efforts. So welcome to my bee patch, and no, we are not lazy by not mowing the lawn. This is done by design so that we have one patch that is completely sort of left to go to nature, and I've surrounded it with all my fruits. This is my orchard, but there we go, there's mown lawn, and inside there is just chaos. And the idea around that is to provide a safe haven for dandelions and clovers and other little plants like lawn daisies to grow, to provide food for the bees as they go through our gardens. I've also surrounded it with other plants that attract bees like scented pelargoniums, alyssums, there's poppies inside, violas, there's zinnias coming up. So the idea is to create a bee patch, a bee-friendly patch, to encourage more pollinators to come to the garden so that at the end of the day I can have more fruit, and so that we can ensure the continued livelihood of bees in our beautiful country. And in the middle of my bee patch, in the center of my orchard, I have started to create a little bug hotel. Now you may have seen bug hotels all over Pinterest and the internet, and I think it's a really neat idea, and it looks kind of cool in a biodynamic garden as well. And the idea is you create nooks and crannies, dark spots, warm places for all sorts of critters to come and stay in your garden. So we have broken pots, we've got some pine cones, there's some pieces of driftwood, all sorts of things just stuffed in. I think I've got a bit of hay here somewhere. There's some hay, and I've seen a couple of spiders move in, there's lizards that run around, and I'm going to create a specific bumblebee hotel as well, so that those guys that love to play on my poppies have a little home to go to close by. It's a fun project to do with kids as well. They like to create a modge podge of things that they collect and know that it goes for a good cause. This one is only half done. It's supposed to be chock-a-block full of things, and that will come over time as we go on. But a very neat project to do. When people start a vegetable garden, they often ask me, what should I plant? And the best answer I can give is plant what you eat. If you like lettuces or if you like salads, plant a lot of lettuces. If you don't eat beans, don't plant beans. For me, I love Mediterranean cuisine, so there's always a lot of zucchini in my garden and eggplant. And what a beauty this zucchini turned out to be. This is a Cocoselle zucchini, an Italian heirloom, and I got these two from it yesterday. Beautiful specimens. And there's already another 1, 2 that will probably be ready in the next few days. So when you grow a zucchini, you obviously need quite a lot of space. You can see this guy is taking up half of a 1.2 meter bed, and I wouldn't go for smaller than that. People do grow them quite successfully in large buckets. It's something you can try, but a plant will only produce as well as the area that you give it to grow in. Quickly, two things I want to talk about with the zucchini plant specifically, and the first is the white dots. A question that I get asked quite often on the zucchini plants as they grow is, what is wrong with my zucchini when people see these white dots? Now, firstly, white covering on leaves can mean mildew, and powdery mildew normally happens in hot and humid conditions where there's not a lot of airflow through the plant. And how you know it's mildew and not just the normal coloration, which this is by trying to rub it off. If you find a little white patch and you rub it and it doesn't actually come off, see, it stays there, then that's just the normal coloration of the plant. But if it rubs off easily and you're actually left with white substance on your fingers, that is powdery mildew. So when your plant has these little white splotches, and you can see it's almost in a pattern along the veins of the leaf, it's quite normal and you shouldn't fret about it. Only worry when you've got mildew that you can rub off. Another question I get asked, or maybe something that I just like to impart to people, is what zucchini, you don't need two plants of zucchinis to make fruit or vegetables, but you do need to have two types of flowers on the plant. The one is a female flower and the other one is a male flower. And they're actually quite easy to distinguish once you get the hang of it. So if you look in here, even this little one over there, that one there, I can see is a female because it already has the little zucchini on it. Even that one over there, you can see the ovary is already in the shape of a zucchini. It's just very small before the flower petals actually open. This one over here, however, is just a long thin stalk. It just goes straight up. There's no swollen ovary base. This does not look like this one, for example. That's a male flower. Generally, your male flowers open first. So this guy had a lot of male flowers. There was one, there was one. There were two more over there that open first. And they're necessary for the bees to collect some pollen from before they come into the female flower and pollinate it. If you don't get good pollination, you may end up with something called blossom end rot. That is where either from too little calcium in your soil or because the plant wasn't pollinated properly. So if you find that your plant rots off from the bottom end here, from the flower end, it gets all smushy and rots off, it means that it wasn't pollinated and the ovary couldn't develop your proper fruit. What you can do is you tickle your plant, and some people say it's a little bit rude, but anyway, if this flower was open, you would just take your finger and wriggle it around to get a bit of the pollen, the male pollen, and then go into your female flower, and on there you'll just go and rub it around. So this one's already been pollinated because I can see the flower is all done, and that's a good size zucchini almost. So that can ensure that you have good zucchini set at the end of the day. But if you interplant with a lot of pollinating flowers or pollinator attractive flowers, you get bumblebees that love to come around the zucchini plants and pollinate them for you. Thank you for watching 5 at 5 with me, Minette Tanoli. I hope you've learned something new this week or is inspired to try something new in your own garden. Remember to go and have a look at the 5 at 5 on the Meadowsweet website, where I go a little bit more into detail at the bottom of each video explaining what I have been talking about.